mẹ với ở nhà thôi, chứ cũng không ít đi gặp hơn mọi lần rồi.
The evening sun casts a soft golden hue over the rural village, the air heavy with the scent of lemongrass and damp earth. Too Deep kneels in her small garden, her hands trembling as she pulls weeds, her face pale, her breath shallow from a lingering illness. The garden is modest, rows of vegetables stretching toward a weathered fence, the village around her eerily quiet as dusk settles in. Her mother, Jack's mother, stands on the porch of their small house, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the path for any sign of the doctor. Too Deep, come inside, you're too weak to be out here. Her mother calls, her voice sharp with worry, her brow furrowed deeply. I'm fine, Mother. Too Deep replies, her voice faint, forcing a smile, though her hands shake as she grips a small papaya. She thinks of Jack, her brother, who's been away for days, his silence a heavy weight on her already fragile heart. A rustle in the bushes makes her freeze, her pulse spiking, her senses heightened by the village's unnatural stillness. Mother, did you hear that? She asks, her voice tight, her eyes darting to the shadows, fear creeping into her chest. It's just the wind, her mother says, stepping closer. Though her own eyes betray a flicker of unease, the village too quiet. Too Deep stands, her knees wobbling, the papaya slipping from her hands, rolling into the dirt, her strength fading fast. Her mother rushes to her side. You're burning up, where's that doctor? She mutters, her voice trembling, her hands steadying Too Deep. They walk back to the house, Too Deep leaning on her mother, the garden fading into the dusk, the sky deepening to a bruised purple. Inside, the small kitchen is dim, the walls peeling, a faint smell of firewood lingering despite the new gas stove in the corner. Too Deep collapses onto a wooden chair, her breaths labored, her mother hovering, her hands wringing with worry. I should have called the doctor sooner, her mother says, her voice cracking, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Too Deep manages a weak smile. It's just a fever, Mother, I'll be fine. Though her words lack conviction, her body betraying her. She thinks of Jack, his last call rushed. I'll be back soon, he'd said, but that was 3 days ago. Where is he now? Her mother paces. If Jack were here, he'd know what to do. He always does. Her voice a mix of hope and frustration. A knock at the door startles them both. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, steps in, his bag slung over his shoulder. Sorry I'm late, the doctor says, his voice calm but his eyes sharp as he takes in Too Deep's pale, sweat-slicked face. Doctor, thank goodness, Jack's mother says, her relief palpable, gesturing to Too Deep. She's been unwell for days. The doctor kneels beside Too Deep, his hands gentle as he checks her pulse, his brow furrowing at the rapid, erratic beat. You're dehydrated and this fever's too high, he says, his tone serious, pulling a thermometer from his bag. Too Deep nods weakly. It started after I worked in the garden, she murmurs, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor frowns. Have you been eating? Sleeping? His questions pointed, his concern deepening as he examines her. Barely, her mother interjects. She's been too worried about Jack. He hasn't called, hasn't come home. The doctor nods, his expression softening. Stress can worsen these things. Let's get her some medicine and rest. He pulls out a small vial and a syringe. This will help with the fever, he says, preparing the injection with steady hands. Too Deep winces as the needle pierces her arm. Her mother hovering, her hands clasped tightly, her worry a living thing. Rest now, the doctor says, packing his bag. I'll check on you tomorrow, call me if she gets worse. Thank you, doctor, Jack's mother says, her voice thick with gratitude, though her eyes still dart to the window searching. The doctor nods, stepping out into the night, the door closing softly behind him, leaving the house in heavy silence. Jack's mother turns to Too Deep. You heard him, rest, she says, her tone firm, though her hands tremble as she helps Too Deep to a mat. Too Deep lies down, her body heavy, the fever still burning. Her thoughts a tangle of worry for Jack, her brother, her rock. Her mother moves to the kitchen. I'll make some porridge, she says, her voice softer now, a mother's instinct to nurture taking over. She lights the gas stove, the flame flaring to life, a small marvel after years of struggling with firewood. A gift she suspects is from Jack. No more hauling wood, she murmurs, her voice a mix of relief and gratitude. The stove a quiet blessing in their hard life. She stirs rice in a pot, the steam rising, the simple meal a testament to her resilience, her need to care for her daughter. Too Deep watches from the mat, her eyes heavy. Mother, do you think Jack's okay? She asks, her voice small, vulnerable. I don't know, her mother replies, her voice breaking. He's always been reckless, I just wish he'd call. Too Deep nods, her heart aching. Jack's absence a void that grows larger with each passing hour. Her fear unrelenting. She thinks of their childhood. Jack always protecting her, pulling her through the darkest times, her only constant. If he's in trouble, she whispers, her voice trailing off, the thought too heavy to finish, her fevered mind spiraling. Her mother stirs the porridge, the rhythmic motion a small comfort, the steam filling the room with a faint warm scent. A distant motorbike roars, cutting through the silence. Too Deep tenses, her senses flaring, hoping it's Jack, but the sound fades. Jack's mother glances out the window, her hands stilling. That wasn't him, she says, her voice flat, her hope dimming. Too Deep closes her eyes, her body weak, the fever pulling her toward sleep, though her mind refuses to rest. She thinks of the village, its quiet too deep, as if it's holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to break the stillness. A shadow passes the window, Too Deep gasps, her eyes snapping open, her heart leaping into her throat. Mother! She calls, her voice weak but urgent, her hands gripping the edge of the mat, her fear surging. Her mother rushes over. What is it? she asks, her voice sharp, her eyes darting to the window, her own fear rising. It's nothing, just a cat. Too deep, says, her breath ragged. The glint of eyes in the dark confirming her words, but the fear lingers. Her mother exhales. You need to rest, she says, her tone firm, though her hands tremble as she returns to the stove. Too deep nods, her body sinking back, the fever making her head swim. Her thoughts a tangle of worry and exhaustion. The porridge simmers, its warmth a contrast to the chill of her fears. Her mother's presence a small comfort in the dim room. She thinks of Jack's last words, "I'll be back soon." A promise that feels hollow now, 3 days later with no word. Her mother spoons the porridge into a bowl. "Eat a little," she says, sitting beside Too Deep, her voice gentle, coaxing. Too Deep takes a small bite, the warmth soothing though her appetite is gone, her worry for Jack consuming her. "It's good, Mother," she says, forcing a smile, the effort exhausting, her body screaming for rest. Her mother watches her. "You're all I have left," she says, her voice breaking, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Too Deep reaches for her hand. "Jack will come back, he always does," she says, her voice weak but firm, a hope she clings to. Her mother nods, though her eyes betray her doubt, the silence between them heavy. The village's hush pressing in. A creak from the porch makes them both jump, their pulses racing. Someone's out there, the sound too deliberate to ignore. "Too Deep, stay here," her mother whispers, her voice sharp, grabbing a broom from the corner, her hands trembling. She steps to the door, her breath shallow, the broom held like a weapon. Her heart pounding as she peers into the darkness. The porch is empty, the village swallowed by night, the silence oppressive, her fear a living thing that wraps around her. She locks the door, her hands shaking. "Just the wind," she says, though her voice wavers, her fear not fully eased. Too Deep watches from the mat, her heart racing. "Mother, be careful," she whispers, her voice barely audible, her fear spiking. Her mother returns, setting the broom down. "We're safe," she says, though her eyes dart to the window, her doubt clear. Too deep nods, her body heavy, the fever pulling her under. Her thoughts a tangle of worry for Jack, her brother, her rock. She thinks of their father long gone and how Jack had taken his place, always protecting her, always there, until now. Her mother sits beside her, the porridge cooling. "He'll come back," she says, more to herself, a mantra against the fear. Too Deep closes her eyes. "I know," she whispers, though the doubt gnaws at her, her fevered mind spiraling again. The night deepens, the village silent, the air thick with tension, the weight of their worry a shared burden. Too Deep drifts toward sleep, the fever pulling her under. Her mother's presence a quiet anchor in the storm of her fears. The phone on the table buzzes suddenly. Too Deep's eyes snap open, her heart leaping, her mother grabbing it first. "It's Jack," her mother gasps, her voice trembling, answering the call with a shaky hand, her hope flaring. "Lytutien, hello everyone," she says instinctively, then catches herself. "Jack, is that you?" Her voice urgent. "Mother, it's me." Jack's voice crackles through, tired but warm. A lifeline in the dark, a relief that washes over them. "Jack." Too Deep calls, her voice weak, sitting up, her fever forgotten, her heart lifting at the sound of his voice. "I'm back. Sorry I didn't call," Jack says, his tone heavy with guilt. "Got caught up with work, but I'm here now." "Where are you?" Jack's mother asks, her voice trembling. "We've been so worried. Too Deep sick, Jack." "I'm in the village, just a few kilometers away," he says. "I'll come see you tomorrow around noon." "Are you okay?" Too Deep asks, her voice breaking, the fear of the past days spilling over, her relief palpable. "I'm fine," Jack assures her. "I left a stove for you. Hope it helps with the cooking, makes things easier." "It does," Jack's mother says, her voice soft. "Thank you, Jack. You don't know how much this means to us." "I'll see you soon," Jack says. "Tell Too Deep to rest. I'll bring some medicine tomorrow too." "Jack, don't disappear like that again," Too Deep says, her voice firm despite her weakness, her love for him clear. "I won't," he promises, his voice steady, the call ending with a soft click, leaving the room in silence. Jack's mother sets the phone down, her breath steadying. "He's coming tomorrow," she says, her voice lighter now. Too Deep nods, her body sinking back. "Tomorrow?" she echoes, her heart lifting, the promise a light in her darkness. Her mother smiles. "Eat a bit more," she says, spooning porridge, her hands steadier, her fear receding. Too Deep takes another bite, the warmth soothing, her appetite returning. Jack's voice a balm for her frayed nerves. The stove's flame flickers, the porridge warm, their hearts lighter, hope creeping in like a soft dawn. Jack's mother sits beside her. He always comes through, she says, her voice soft, her eyes glistening with relief. Too Deep nods. He does, she says, her voice steady, her fever still present but her spirit renewed. The night outside grows quiet, the village alive again, its threat retreating, the tension easing for now. Too Deep drifts toward sleep, the fever pulling her under. Jack's promise a shield against her fears, a reason to hold on. Her mother watches over her, the porridge bowl empty, her hands still, her heart lighter, her worry eased. The room grows quiet, the stoves glow a beacon, their resilience a shared strength, their fight paused for the night. The village watches, its secrets still hidden, but their hope burns brighter than its shadows, a quiet defiance. Too Deep sleeps, her breathing steady, Jack's voice echoing in her dreams. Tomorrow a new day, a new fight. Her mother sits by the window, the night stretching endlessly, her thoughts on Jack, on Too Deep, on their fragile family. She thinks of the garden, the work waiting at dawn, the endless cycle of survival they've carved out here. But tonight, she feels a shift, a small spark of possibility. Jack's return a bridge to something better. The candle on the table flickers, its glow faint but enough, a symbol of their resilience, their unyielding will. She closes her eyes, the night a canvas of stars, her heart lighter, her fight paused, her hope renewed. The village remains silent, the night deep and still, their small house a sanctuary in the darkness.
A risk taker. After being raised in an atmosphere of uncertainties, she could easily justify a fear of risk instead of my mom led by the motto that even a small step taken with courage is far better than being paralyzed by fear. Over the years, I wondered about the source of my mother's fearless nature until one day when I had a crisis of courage. As usual, I picked up the phone to call the call for advice after listening to my list of complaints and worries my mother drew